Here in Wausau, Wisconsin, we are honored to be joined by Governor Scott Walker. Now, Governor Walker, you just signed SB 93, and some would think that you just made it lawlessness and craziness and shooting in the streets. And what is it like when you get such reactions like that here in the state?
Well, I even had a reporter today ask us about it. I said, look at the facts. You look all across the country. We now join 48 other states that have a concealed carry law of some sort or another. In our case, we've got one of the best laws in the country. And you look just to the west, our neighbor in Minnesota has had this for about a decade. It's worked effectively well. What it does is allow law-abiding citizens to be able to protect themselves, their property, and most importantly, their families. And in contrast, before this law, the only people who were carrying were the criminals, and we want to even up the odds.
You are the governor of a very beautiful state, and I would imagine that's very rich in Second Amendment tradition.
Yeah.
Talk about your constituents.
It is, and the interesting thing that's been frustrating, even before being governor, is for about a decade working to try and get this passed. We had a number of times where Democrat and Republican lawmakers alike voted to make this law possible, and then you had my predecessor, a governor, veto it multiple times over, and at the end, within just one vote the last time, it was they avoided having an override of that veto. Now, new legislature, new governor, we're able to get the job done, good bipartisan support, and it's one of those where the people overwhelmingly support it. A lot of hunters, a lot of hunting, fishing, and trapping tradition in this state over 163 years, but also both in our state constitution, just like our U.S. Constitution, an affirmation of our right to keep and bear arms. This is one more example of upholding that tradition of freedom.
Governor, I live in Washington, but I watch the news, of course, and I see the protests in Madison, and I see a lot of the vitriol. But this was a bipartisan bill, and both parties came together. Talk about that.
Well, it really is. It's one of those where I think increasingly what we found, particularly in the state Senate, I mentioned this earlier today when we signed this, we had every female senator, Republican and Democrat alike, sign it. I think it's because it's not just concealed carry, it's rightfully a personal protection act, because it's not just about protecting their constitutional rights, which are paramount. Predestined by our Creator and ultimately upheld by the Constitution and protected every day by the men and women in a uniform out there. But also, it is about protection, in many cases, protection for younger people, for women and others who want to have the right to protect themselves, particularly in some of our urban areas across the state. That's why individuals who I think many people would be surprised politically ended up voting for this, even in Milwaukee, for example, because they understand that you need to even out the odds, that there are law-abiding citizens who want to protect themselves, who don't want to be prey for the criminals out there, and this is exactly what this does.
We have a lot of listeners and viewers in Illinois who are going to probably want to move here now, who are going to wish you were their governor. What would you say to them? Obviously, it can happen. You're number 49 out of 50. There's one to go. What would you say to them?
Well, as usual, we're ahead of Illinois. But we've got a great slogan when Tommy Thompson was governor for tourism that said, "Escape to Wisconsin." I said it earlier the year when the politicians in Springfield raised taxes by 2/3 on income and about 50% on businesses. This is one more reason to come on up to Wisconsin, not just to vacation, but one more reason Wisconsin's ahead of the curve. And for us, it's a long time overdue. We should have had it long before number 49, but one more reason to escape to Wisconsin. That and the fact that we have the Super Bowl champion Green Bay Packers, that doesn't hurt either. But
Governor, there's a small protest, of course, outside, and I consider myself pretty thick-skinned, but they see an NRA mic flag, and all of a sudden they're yelling at me. You're a human being. I mean, what is it like, when you see the protests and the vitriol? I mean, does it get to you? How do you shake it off? Because even I was a little bit rattled by it. I was out there for 5 minutes.
Well, and I've had plenty more than were here today in the past. I mean, we had 70, 80,000 at one point, and many of whom were from across the country. I had a guy a couple weeks ago yell at me when I was in New York for something that, hey, I was in Madison protesting you suck. And I said to the guy walking with me, I said, well, see, they weren't from Wisconsin.
Right.
But obviously there are people from Wisconsin as well as those from Illinois and Nevada and New Jersey and Washington, D.C. for that matter. Well, what I said throughout the last couple of months is what's great about America is they have every right to be heard. They can say and do what they want. That's what the Constitution's about, not just the Second Amendment, but the First Amendment as well. But I've also put it in perspective, and that is, even if there's a couple hundred protesters at an event like this, what I remind myself is I was elected to represent the interest of more than 5.5 million people in this state. And whether it's on taxes, whether it's on the constitutional right to carry, whether it's on any other issues out there, I have to remember that just because people are loud doesn't mean they drown out the voices of everyday citizens who are back at home doing their job and just want the government to stand up and defend their rights.
All right, last question. You're talking to a lot of people who are always looking for places to shoot and hunt and fish. Sell your state. Why should people come here?
This is the only state in the union surrounded by 2 Great Lakes and the greatest river in the U.S. We're filled with 15,000 lakes, 15,000 inland lakes. It's 5,000 more than Minnesota, and all those are filled with fish. It's a great place. I ride a Harley, so it's a great place to ride your bike, to boat, to fish, to swim, to hunt. We've got it all. We've got a great tradition when it comes to hunting, to fishing, to trapping, and we've got some of the friendliest people in the world. You want to come to Wisconsin.
Governor Walker, thank you. Congratulations on your day.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.